All right. Welcome, everyone. So lovely to see faces here in the Zoom room, and we extend our welcome to you if you're practicing with us later on the YouTube channel. I hope you feel included in the circle. Um, so, where to begin? Well, okay. So I'm inspired tonight by a poet who's very prolific author. Um, her bio on her page describes herself as a writer, novelist, storyteller, feminist, reader, literature lover, introvert, and citizen of humanity, among other things, I'm sure. Her name is Elif Shafak, Safak. I thought there was an H in it, but her website says otherwise. So I've put her link down below in the YouTube recording. So please check out her works. You may already know her. And I saw an interview of her, a clip of a longer interview that you can find on YouTube on an Instagram page called the Female Poets Society on Instagram. Uh, Lots of wonderful gems on that Instagram page. And so on that page, they've posted this excerpt of a longer interview with this author. Uh, and so I'll just read her words and then I might circle back because I know I tend to interject when I'm sharing someone's words. So I want to just share her words and then I'll go back over it. Uh, yeah. And I wrote down pretty much exactly what she said because it was perfect. In her interview, she's talking about having read the works and the memoirs of people who have survived really dark chapters in human history. And she names holocausts, civil wars, genocides. And all of these memoirs, she says, they all raise the question of how can such atrocities happen? She says their answer is it not because there are so many bad people out there. She says there are bad people, but relatively speaking, their numbers are small. But still bad things happen. So how is that possible? She asks. And she summarizes the answer they're giving us is that maybe the opposite of goodness is not necessarily evil or badness or wickedness. But what they're saying is the opposite of goodness is, in fact, numbness. Wow. She goes on, it's the moment we become numb, indifferent, desensitized, disconnected from each other. The moment we stop feeling the story of someone else, living in another part of the world and what that might be like, the moment we stop caring about someone else, and that these are very dangerous thresholds. Um, this really stood out to me at the time because I had read this just before I was going to a Pink Floyd concert, and one of the very famous songs from Pink Floyd. It was called Brit Floyd. There's also Ozzy Floyd. I've been to lots of those, but they recreate Pink Floyd music like to the note perfectly, with the full band and sometimes a little better. But really excellent concerts. And I was just at one 2 weeks ago. Um, so one of their famous songs is called Comfortably Numb. Hopefully that doesn't become too much of an earworm for you, those of you who know this song. And then I read this quote from her about the opposite of goodness, not necessarily evil, but numbness. Oh my gosh, that really stood out to me. And as she was speaking here about reading memoirs and history about really dark chapters in time in history, Holocausts, civil wars, genocides, it's like that's not history. That's right now. And we all know that. We all know that. Um, and I know that we all have this question, how is this happening? How is this happening? I thought that wasn't going to happen again, right? I'm sure we've all thought this. How can these such atrocities happen? And it can be in kind of dualistic thinking. I've certainly had times of this, of kind of feeling there's a lot of bad people out there, and kind of feeling like, whoa, are we in the minority here of people that are trying to not cause harm, that are trying to practice and live in wise wisdom and compassion? Like we can, it's easy to get into that sense of overwhelm and thinking like there's a lot of bad people. And I found it so helpful, this reflection that she is sharing, that it's not because there are so many bad people out there. Yes, there are some bad people or people causing a lot of harm, but relatively speaking, their numbers of small are small. And that's just like a little heart sigh of like, oh, to remember that, just like, oh, okay, a little perspective, like that, just that is easeful and heartening for me to remember and to watch for the negativity bias that we all have built within us, this survival mechanism to actually give more synaptic connections to negative experiences in our brain, um, part of this animal nature. And that negativity bias really needs to be checked. Is it true? Is it really true? Uh, but she goes on, so, but still bad things. How is this possible? What's happening? And so it's so easy to just, in a literary sense, the opposite of goodness is badness or evil or wickedness. Like they're literal opposites. But she's saying, in fact, the opposite of goodness is, in fact, numbness. And this moment, the or this whole period where we become a little bit numb, desensitized, indifferent perhaps, and disconnected from each other, especially into this binary of good people and bad people, us and them, etc. Um, and it really reminds me of a, part of the Dharma, which is called equanimity or upekkha, and how sometimes equanimity is wrongly misconstrued as being having that sense of separation, of kind of floating above it all on a little cloud. I'm very peaceful. I'm not in that fray, kind of removing ourselves to the mountaintop or um, separating ourselves as something other than. Uh, and that is a misconception of equanimity. Equanimity in the Dharma is not disconnected, absolutely not disconnected. It's uh, Kyra Jewel I've put her link down below as well, who's a Dharma teacher, um, said that equanimity is in fact full of love. It is the face of love. It's so beautiful. It's such a sense of interconnectedness. Mm. And it's a balancing factor so that we can continue to be in the midst of how things are, in the gain and loss, the pain and the joy, the beauty and the despair, all of the what are called the vicissitudes of life, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, fame and disrepute, praise and blame. But we could think of any kind of things that seem like opposites and be aware of this whole continuum in between. And equanimity is the presence in the midst of how things are. Uh, Sometimes it's likened to surfing on the waves, so that presence with the highs and lows, the ups and downs. Another image for equanimity is a mountain, that sense of stability and groundedness and width and presence that also has this mountain peak view of being able to see the big picture, the whole picture, in the middle of it all. Hmm. So equanimity really is a quality that keeps us resourced and energized, so that we can continue engaging. It's centered and grounded. And that steadiness and presence, when it's manifested or feels really stable in equanimity, is free of reactivity. We're not being pulled along for the ride on this roller coaster, but present and steady in the midst of it, so that we have the ability to respond to what's happening with compassion and care and wisdom, respondability rather than reactivity. And Thich Nhat Hanh, I believe Kyra was part of his community for many years, was a nun in that community. I'm pretty sure. Apologies if I have that wrong. But Thich Nhat Hanh said that upekkha is the practice of inclusiveness, the opposite of numbness. Inclusiveness of that big picture, including the likes and the dislikes and the all those vicissitudes. And to check in with ourselves if we have some degree of being comfortably numb. Because I would suggest that we may be being colonized by numbness. Numbness is a colonial colonizer's strategy to overwhelm us with information, to overwhelm us with choices, to overwhelm us with legislative things being slammed through it, this huge array of things that you can't keep up with and can't engage with and fight for or against. This is all designed to create numbness so that we're just like, nothing I can do about it. It's all overwhelming. And we naturally separate ourselves as a protection, as a coping strategy. And I want to name here also that for survivors of trauma, which we all are to some degree, but for many folks, numbness is a skillful survival strategy to know when you need to disconnect, to know when you need to unplug, to tune out. And it can be helpful to do that with intention. Just before we logged on, we were talking about some folks here that recently sat a wonderful silent meditation retreat. And one of my favorite things to do after teaching a retreat, especially if I've been teaching on my own, it's a fair bit of intensity and onness. And one of my favorite things to do after teaching a retreat is go to a movie. I'm like, boop, off, turn it off switch. And I'm doing it so intentionally and mindfully. It's like, I know that's what I'm doing. Let me just check into some other story and not be on. And so to use mm, numbness is kind of an intense word, but to be intentional about when you need to disconnect as a coping, as a soothing, as a strategy, so that it's not happening out of reactivity, but intention. Like, I'm feeling really burned out, overloaded. I'm going to unplug for a little while and, you know, disengage from too much overload. So that might be resonant for you. And just to name that it can be a healthy coping natural strategy for folks as well. Um, but what I was talking about and what I believe, I cannot speak for her, but what it sounds like from her writing, what Elif is saying about numbness as the opposite of goodness is more about a global cultural tendency that can keep us from engaging and feeling connected, interconnected. Yes, and I think of who sent it. Oh yeah. It was someone in another Dharma group that was talking about there can be a really addictive quality to numbness, an analgesic kind of mm, feeling that feels comfortable, comfortably numb. And to just check in, is there kind of is it intentional? Do you know what you're doing? Is it a skillful coping strategy, or is it becoming a bit of a habit? Hmm. In the four Brahma Viharas, which are the four meditations, the cultivations of the heart abodes, the abodes of the heart. Equanimity is a balancing factor for compassion that without equanimity, compassion can lead to burnout, can lead to compassion fatigue, and overwhelm. And so cultivating this practice of equanimity helps us see the big picture, to have some perspective, but still feel connected, not separate. Yeah, I think that's all. So I'm just going to check this note here. Hmm. Hmm. Maybe I'll add this note from Thich Nhat Hanh. 1 second. Hmm. During the war in Vietnam, Thich Nhat Hanh said that other people are not our enemies. He says a human is never our enemy. Our only enemies are greed, hatred, and delusion. He said delusion, hatred, and ignorance, but greed, hatred, and delusion are the three kleshas, the root defilements that are spoken of in the Dharma. And he says it is possible to uproot this in ourselves and others. If we see ourselves as beloved, such a good word, um, we can encounter others without malice, even when we disagree. Wow, that's the power of equanimity and of inclusiveness. That's so, I certainly can easily uh, get confused there of seeing other people as enemies and what they're doing is evil. Um, and he's saying a human is never our enemy. It's the greed, hatred, and delusion that is the enemy. That's helpful. So that our hearts don't get caught in the burning, in the boiling of ill will. When we hold ill will to others, it's like picking up a hot coal to throw at someone. It's burning us. And it's helpful to identify it's actually the greed, it's actually the delusion and the hatred that is the enemy, if we want to use that word even. All right, I should stop talking, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna put there. Just having an inner debate. 1 second. Well, I'm hesitant to share this poem from Thich Nhat Hanh. It's very intense, and I'm also confused about trigger warnings. To say trigger warning before saying something is like this is could be harmful, but I'm gonna say it. Yeah, so I'm not going to. But I'll put the link to the poem down below. You may already know it. It's called Call Me by My True Names. It's a poem by Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's his experience and his looking deeply, um, and seeing himself in all beings. Um, yeah, in those that have been abused and those that are abusers. And he's identifying that if I had lived that exact same life with all those causes and conditions and ancestry, um, all those causes and conditions exactly, I would be that person doing that harm, that greed, hatred, and delusion. Um, and this is a practice of great wisdom and anatta, mm, not seeing ourselves as separate, and great equanimity, where he's this practice of boundless inclusiveness that has the ability to include many perspectives. So I'll put the link to that poem and you can decide if you want to read it. That feels better. All right, friends, let's practice. Adjust your space for your practice or your posture. We're beginning to settle into your posture. See if you need any other movement or adjustments. Setting aside distractions and turning our awareness to this inner experience. When you've found your posture, find a place that feels restful and supportive for your eyes, whether it's closed or downward or resting on something peaceful and beautiful. And then we'll begin to feel this beautiful quality of the mountain, this embodied experience of settling down, growing into a wide and deep base of groundedness. The mountain, of course, is not just sitting on the surface of the earth, but below the surface, even wider and deeper than we see. So as you begin to relax your face and shoulders, relaxing the neck and the chest, inviting some softness to the belly. As the upper body relaxes, feeling more weightedness, earthiness. And perhaps feeling your energy body bigger than your physical body so that you feel wide and deep, forward, side to side, behind, really wide and grounded. Interconnected with the earth. And from that mountain base, feeling the uprightness of your center, your core, the uprightness of your ethics and values, sila, as we undertake these trainings to refrain from causing harm, to refrain from taking life, to refrain from taking more than is freely offered to us. To refrain from speaking harshly and falsely. To refrain from causing harm with our sensuality and sexuality. And to refrain from heedlessness or a lack of mindfulness from intoxicants. The many ways that we comfort and tune out. In these next few moments of silence together, you could reflect on your own ethics, your uprightness, your core, your values. Undertake these trainings to refrain from reactivity and greed, hatred, and delusion. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, greed, hatred, and delusion are the true enemies. So feeling this wide mountain base and the uprightness of your core, your center, your values. And then this mountain peak view of equanimity that can look out over the whole of the world, excluding none. Not separate from, not disconnected from each other, not indifferent or desensitized or numb. Kyra said, equanimity is full of love. It is the face of love. Feeling your heart center and awake awareness is boundless, is aware of all of these vicissitudes. And can feel a steadiness and presence in the midst of it all. From the center of this embodied present moment, inviting into awareness a dear one, friendly, someone that's easy for you to open awareness and care with them in heart mind. Just let this being stand in for all those that are easy for the heart to open to. Understanding that at times they experience gain and loss, pleasure or pain, praise or censure, criticism, all of these things coming and going. Including them in your awareness. May you know steadiness in the midst of these arisings and passings. May you know or cultivate steadiness in the midst of these arisings and passings. May you feel grounded in presence and see the big picture. May you feel grounded in presence and see the big picture. Releasing that sense of connection with a dear one. Feel your embodied, grounded mountain posture. Now bring into awareness someone that is neutral to you. You don't have a strong like or dislike for them, but someone you might see fairly often, perhaps in your neighborhood, in your building, at your workplace, or at a store that you frequent, gas station. And just bring in awareness of one of these people that you have interacted with fairly regularly. And understand that they too experience all of these waves. Cultivate your heart awareness that is not separate, that is caring and inclusive and full of love. May you cultivate steadiness in this arising and passing. May you feel grounded in presence and see the big picture when things feel overwhelming. You could add your own words or just rest in that felt experience of the aspirations for equanimity with this neutral person. May you be steady and at ease. Bowing out of this heart connection with this neutral being, feel your embodied presence here and now. Rest into that ground, uprightness and height. And now bring into awareness someone that might feel like a difficult person. It's considered wise to not choose the most difficult person in your life, although we do tend to scratch that itch often, but just someone where there's some unresolved or disconnect or confusion. And as Thich Nhat Hanh says, other people are not our enemies. A human is never our enemy. And even though they may be doing things that are causing harm, see that they too experience gain and loss and fear and joy and all of it. And the actual harm is the greed or the hatred or the delusion. And we wish for them, may you cultivate steadiness in all of this arising and passing. May you feel grounded in presence and see the big picture. May you be steady and at ease in the midst of it all. Bowing out of this sense of connection with the difficult being. Feel that deep and wide, grounded presence right now. Feel your uprightness. And then at that mountain peak, that boundless, inclusive equanimity. All beings, all beings. May all beings everywhere deeply know and understand that the opposite of goodness may be numbness, that all of us are working with the harms of greed, hatred, and delusion. May all beings everywhere be blessed by the face of love. May all beings everywhere be seen. Mm. Thank you for your practice and for joining us. If you were here with us on the YouTube channel, please check all the links down below for the authors and teachers that I've mentioned and the poem that I mentioned as well. Um, Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Thank you.